I'm here with Lauren Coker, who has created a film trailer along with a film poster and film magazine front cover for her A2 coursework. Lauren is going to be telling us a bit about her products, specifically the ways in which her product use develop or challenge forms and conventions of the real media products. Now, Lauren, could you tell us a bit about your products?
Yeah, before I actually started creating the products, I did a lot of research, just general research into all genres. And then once I'd chosen to do horror, I specifically focused everything, all my research around horror, so that I knew what I was creating. I broke some conventions, such as I used a female. I'll talk about that later, because I believe that newer generations are looking for newer ideas. So by breaking some conventions, I'm introducing those ideas into my work while maintaining the, let's call it, traditional horror conventions. You know, they're still there as its backbone, because if I broke all conventions, then it just wouldn't be horror. So
That's great. So if we focus on each of your products, could you tell us a bit about conventions you found during your research and how you use these conventions in your own work? Let's start with your magazine cover.
Okay, well, through my research, I found a lot of different conventions. You'll probably get sick of hearing about conventions by the end of this. The first one being that they use the main character from the film as the main image on the magazine, because clearly this is the person whose people are going to recognise the most. They also tend to use either a medium shot, which they'd probably use for something like Harry Potter, because people associate Daniel Radcliffe with being Harry Potter, so there's a clear link there. Whereas for other films, they might use a long shot of the character, which is all set up, of course, and that's to show their costume off, so that the audience has a better understanding of what that film is actually about. By this I mean its genre, specifically. For instance, if they're wearing a long jacket and a hat, maybe, they could possibly be an inspector or something like that, just as an example, so the film could be focused on crime. Another thing I noticed was that the secondary images, if any, were usually advertising film posters inside, like freebies. Basically the secondary images were just sell lines to gain the audience's attention that they've got free stuff inside. Now, in terms of colour schemes, like I said, I didn't focus on the horror magazines themselves because I didn't like them whatsoever. I thought they looked tacky, amateurish, if that's a word. They just didn't look appealing at all. I'd rather go for a normal film magazine that's focused on horror, because its main article of that edition is a horror film. The next thing I noticed was the masthead. It's always big and bold. It's the thing that stands straight away. It's right in your face. And that's to establish the brand, so it'll become more and more well known, because audiences become more familiar with that brand when, for instance, they walk past it when it's on a shelf. It's hard not to miss it. And it's also, of course, always positioned at the top of the magazine. And another thing is the actual name of the magazine. For instance, Total Film, that suggests that they're experts in their area. And also, for instance, Empire, it's suggesting that they have stacks of knowledge on film alone. It's their specification. They know everything about film. So that's always a good one. You want something that is appropriate but has a lot of thought behind it too. Next, I'm going to go on to cell lines. Now, cell lines, they seem to usually either say the names of the films or the famous actors within the films. Or there may also be cell lines, for instance, like we were talking about earlier, about the posters. You get free film posters inside. But there are also some cell lines that may be larger than others, because there's more important cell lines on the page that the magazine wants the audience to be drawn to more. And another point to mention as well is that a lot of cell lines are often on the left hand side of the magazine cover. This is because, through research, we read left to right, so it makes sense to put them on the left, because we'd start reading from the left first, if that makes sense. And another point, is that the cell lines are usually away from the masthead, because you don't want it to look too cluttered, otherwise it'll look like too much writing on the page. You should also be able to find a barcode most of the time. Some magazines don't put the barcode on the front, which is a pain in my opinion, but you should always have the price of the magazine clearly on the front somewhere. One thing I forgot to mention earlier was about anchorage text. There should always be anchorage text on the front cover, because that tells you it gives you an idea of what the actual main article is about. Otherwise you've got a main image and why is it there? The audience needs to be guided by the anchorage text. Now, the conventions that I followed myself, after going on about that for so long, is I used a horror scheme. There was some green in the photo, that was just the trees in the background from shooting on location. But I did go with a horror colour scheme, such as red, black, white, those types of colours, because since my main article was of a horror genre, I want a horror colour scheme to go with that, otherwise it just wouldn't look right. You've got to have consistency. But something I did use was I tried to get the golden colour for the 3 posters in the corner of my magazine cover, and that was because gold, the connotations it holds is wealth, prizes. The audience think that they are getting so much more for their money. And also I used yellow for the plus in the bottom right hand corner. That was to create symmetry on the page, and also to show, the connotations of yellow are those of happiness and warmth. The audience should be happy about these things that they're getting inside, because they're getting extra articles, free posters and whatnot. It's something to be happy about, and therefore the use of the colour, breaking the convention, is appropriate in this case. There's something that I didn't do was I didn't go with a horror only magazine, because through my research I looked at the horror magazines that are out there on the market already, and they just look so amateurish, if that's a word. They just look fake and like tatty. They're not visually appealing at all. I would not go for one of those magazines. Plus it's limited to horror only. Who wants, unless you're a massive fan of just horror, that limits your audience by making it horror only. Therefore I went for a general magazine. And I didn't use any secondary images because I didn't think it just wouldn't look right on my magazine front cover. And also I found that quite a lot of film magazines didn't have those secondary images anyway, so I am basically sticking to conventions. My masthead is following the conventions. It's massive, it's bold, it's very noticeable, and I also personally think it's a really clever name. Reel Review. Reel is a play on words, film reel, and it's also real, which is, I'm trying to get the message across to the audience that everything inside is truthful and that they can trust what they're reading. In terms of cell lines, I did choose to put cell lines above the masthead, which you may think breaks conventions, but I used a red header to separate those cell lines from the masthead, so that they didn't look like too much text was jumbled together. And also I feel like that the red header helps those cell lines to stand out more, so that the audience's attention is drawn to those cell lines, specifically as like I said earlier, you read from left to right, but also from the top to the bottom. So you're probably more likely to see those first, especially as red's behind them as well. There's a nice contrast between the red and the white. But I have generally put most of my cell lines from on the left hand sides. There are a few on the right in the bottom hand corner, but that's because there's extra space. I'm going to fill it up, otherwise it would just look odd. And I did make one of my cell lines bigger, which was the exclusive interview from the cast of Taken 3. And that was just bigger just because it's an exclusive article in there, so it shows that, you know, you can't get this anywhere else, so get my magazine. The main image I used was a medium shot, and I decided to use this because I thought it was more appropriate. Although we might not know the main character here, that's the point. They are called the Unknown, and we don't know a lot about this character. That's why the main article is featured in this magazine, because the new face of horror, who is this guy? I don't know, let's read about him. That's the point, it's appropriate, and therefore I used it. I decided to put the barcode at the bottom because, you know, it's not very eye-catching, and put the actual price of the magazine at the top because it's nice and clear up there. Can't really miss it, you know, it's just easier to read, in my opinion. And finally, the anchorage text, I tried to make that nice and clear. I put blood splatter underneath it because that's supposed to be symbolising the blood that you can see on the axe itself, therefore relating that anchorage text to the main image itself.
Now I have to say I'm impressed with what you've created, so were there any things that you found difficult when you were creating the cover?
Not really, no. We did magazine covers last year for our AS coursework, so I felt really confident with this, and I know what I'm doing when it comes to this, you know. I know how to lay things out, and it just all comes natural. I don't feel under pressure. It's just, yep, I put that there, I put this here, I know why I'm doing it, always thinking about the audience for every step, and yeah, it just all comes together nice and well, so no problems there really.
Awesome. Now you could tell us a bit about your film poster.
Well, through my research, the conventions I found here were that the title is either at the top of the page or at the bottom, okay? The film title will be the largest piece of text on the page, so that it's noticeable compared to the rest of the text on the page. You want the title to stand out, just like we found earlier in the magazine, like the masthead. You'll also find the tagline of the film at the top, usually, or it may be with the film title too, because that using the tagline gains attention fast. It's to the point. For example, Sinister's tagline, once you see him, nobody can save you. It was something like that. It's chilling. It grabs your attention. Bang, you're like, damn, this film is going to be good. So, yeah, you want a tagline on there. Next, I'd like to mention about the small text at the bottom. It's very compact. That just gives the audience general information if they want it, to see who's involved in the film, usually who's produced the film, the music and whatnot, so you can just find that at the bottom. Here you also find the age rating, so that the audience are straight away aware of whether or not they're allowed to actually see the film in the first place. And yeah, it might also have little symbols for the companies involved. For example, Dolby Digital is one that I've seen quite a lot of times on many different film posters. The font of the text themselves, I've noticed, are either plain. For instance, The Conjuring, they have a plain font, whereas some are they look like the Chiller font on Microsoft Word, I think it is. for instance, I noticed a film poster, what was it called? The Uninvited, it was called, and that was in a chiller font. It wasn't so serious, if that makes sense. I just find the plain fonts are quite serious and traditional as well, so they're clear to read and you've got this edginess about them, so I think it's a good idea to use them for the font of the title. There's also other, I don't know if you want to call them cell lines, but when it mentions things like from the producer or director of so and so, for instance, 28 Days Later used that on their film poster, and that's good because if their past films have had good reviews, then the audience think that they have an idea that the film that they're going to see is decent. They're going to enjoy it. It's not just going to be a bag of rubbish. Whereas on the other hand, audiences that have seen those films might be put off to see the film because they might have had contradictory views towards the films. By that I mean they might not have liked that producer's or director's films in the past, and therefore they wouldn't want to go and see another film that was made by them because, like I said, the same person, it might be kind of similar ideas within the film, so they might not enjoy that film too. There are also social media links on some film posters. For instance, Sinister also uses those, and that is to get the target audience involved with the film, which helps to publicise it more. And this is just done by word of mouth. It goes through social media websites and people, they comment, look at this new film, let's go to the cinema. And that's just a nice way to get the film out there because it's cheap. It barely costs anything because, like I said, it's word of mouth. People, your target audience, are spreading it for you for free, which is great. And lastly, the release date is usually at the bottom of the poster, so it's nice and clear. May say coming soon, to get that anticipation within the target audience, or it may say the specific date when it is released. Now, the conventions I followed was the horror colour scheme, which I used red, white, black, blue, and obviously brown for the ropes. This is because of the connotations each colour holds, red for blurred, white it's a nice clear one that stands out from the background. You want a nice contrast on there. Black, because the connotations black holds, death, darkness. You get what I'm getting at. Blue is one of those colours that's chilling. That's the word I'm looking for. So that's a good one to use too. And the brown ropes are brown, and they're also brown on some posters. Like film posters can look like quite dirty looking, if that makes sense. But I have, I told the actor, the female on my front, the poster, to wear a yellowy greeny top. I used this colour, I told her to wear that because it's ironic, and also I'm trying to show that anybody could be a potential killer. That's the hint through the work there. It's ironic because it breaks the conventions. Those colours that she's wearing should portray happiness. She should be, gentle, loving, kind. Plus she's a female as well, which I'll get onto later. But yeah, I used it for irony's sake, introducing new ideas into my work. For the title of my film, I used a serious, plain looking font because, in my opinion, it looks professional and it's clear to read. Whereas for the cell lines, which is kill or be killed, the quote, I used mixed fonts because, like I said, new ideas into my work again to please the target audience. And also the idea behind that is it's kill or be, that kill is either you kill them and that's their blood, or be killed and portraying this killed part is your blood. It's her blood. If she doesn't do it, then that's going to be her blood everywhere. So either splatter their blood everywhere or her blood's going to get splattered everywhere. That's what I'm going for. It might sound a bit sick, but And then I also used social media within mine because word of mouth, free publicity, why not? So anon.com, it rhymes. I went for that because it's memorable. It's a nice, short, memorable web link or address. I didn't put the release date. I put coming soon because I wanted to build anticipation within my target audience. If I were to set a release date, I'd do more research onto when the other horror films are being released, because I know that you shouldn't really release horror films all together at once. By that I mean you don't want to release a horror when loads of other horrors are being released, because there's more competition out there in that current moment. You want to release it when there aren't many other films out there, because people are more likely to go and see your film then. I put the small print information at the bottom of my poster because I think it looks more professional. It also links well to horror because it's used a lot on horror posters, and also my target audience can find information if they want to. It's there. I made my title big, as it should be. You want it nice and clear. And my tagline is also, like my quote I was on about earlier, kill or be killed. It's also very big, which is not usually found on film posters, but it's not as big as my film title, and it's also clear that it's a quote rather than the title of the film. So that's no problem there. My main image, I've got a mixture of things here. I'm using a hint, which is, you can see the knife in there, and also the hand above her suggests, is she being controlled? There's your hint, It's showing the victim, let's call her the victim, the female, on my poster is young, therefore relating to my target audience because they should be around the 17 and above. I also use cell lines at the top of my poster because I think it's a good idea. If your film has got good reviews, then people are more likely to go and see it. There are some people that may not like your past films, and that's fair enough. You can't be liked by everybody. But for the majority, if that's portrayed as a good film, then people that have seen those previous films will be more likely to go and see your films. And also it's showing that if people haven't seen your films, then they'll think this guy or girl, whoever, has created some awesome films in the past, so I'm gonna go and check out some of their work, and therefore you might gain more fans. Who knows? So yeah, I think that's a good one to use.
Did you have any problems creating the poster?
I created a lot of drafts actually of my film poster because I wanted to make the ropes look more realistic. They might not look amazing, but I tried my best, and I did research on how to edit them more on Photoshop and whatnot. So I've done my best, and that's all I can do. I did 5 drafts. What more can you ask?
Yeah, it's great that you kept trying to improve your work because it honestly made the quality of the product that little bit better each time. So well done for that.
Thank you.
Last but not least, could you tell us about your film trailer and how all it come together?
Well, through my research, I noticed that a lot of different shots were used. For example, a wide angle was used to make the individuals within the scene appear smaller, weaker. You think something's gonna come, something bad's gonna happen. There were low angles used, meaning like the victim would be on the floor and then they'll be looking up to the killer, who would, like, the low angle makes the killer look more superior to them. They have more power. Whereas a high angle may also be used, for example, over the killer's shoulder, or something like that, because that also shows the killer looking down on the victim, so that the victim is weaker than them. There are also establishing shots because obviously you want the audience to know where the scene is taking place. There are a lot of jump cuts, so many jump cuts in horror trailers, because you need that build-up of pressure. You need to keep the audience on their toes. And so yeah, that builds the anticipation, the suspense. It all helps. There are also match cuts. For example, perhaps somebody puts their hand on a door handle and then it's goes to a match cut of them turning the door handle, something like that. And then there are a lot of close-up and medium shots used as well. Close-ups portraying the characters' feelings in that moment. Like maybe it could be a reaction shot. You want to see the terror on their face, because that's scaring the audience too. That's the thrill being built up in the audience. And medium shots to show their emotion but their costume at the same time. All is appropriate. There's zooming as well. There's this thing I call the horror zoom, which is that zoom you see in horror films where it's like the individual or whatever it is there. Just say there's an individual and it looks like the rest of the scene around them is moving, but they aren't moving. Okay, how you do that is you stand back and you zoom in to the character, and then as you track forward with the camera, you are zooming out at the same time, and it creates such a brilliant effect. I found that through my research. I used it, which was cool. There were a lot of tilts as well, not a lot. There were tilts used, for example, in The Conjuring, where it tilts upwards to show the building, it's an establishing shot, but it uses a tilt. Okay, and there's also a ton of effects. Like I said, there are a lot of jump cuts. There are colour changes to the video itself. So the videos appear to look more. They have higher contrast. They may look bluer to create that chilling effect, or browner, that dirty effect. They may appear darker, just the brightness is turned down. There are also a lot of fade in and outs of each video. That may happen, I think it was in Sinister, I don't remember now, but that fades in and out, and then as the trailer progresses, the shots get faster and faster, and then you've just got bam, 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 jump cut every single time, and then there you go, there's a suspense being built up more and more. So that's a brilliant thing to use. There are other effects, such as effects where it looks like the page, the video is burning away. That's used in Sinister, especially at the end. That's a really nice one. And there are other jump cuts that interrupt the scenes as well. I think this was Sinister again, but you'd get things up on the screen really fast. It might be, for instance, a photo of the family that they're talking about, but you'll have that along with, say, a camera sound, and it'll just be that little thing that it'll make you jump, or it'll just cut the scenes up. So it just makes it a bit more disorganised, but it works so well for horror. And then there is also the strobe effect that's used, where the clips are flashing on and off the screen really fast. They're like jump cuts, I suppose, but it's a strobe effect instead. I noticed that horror film trailers are also between 1.5 to 2.5 minutes long. I think any more than 2.5 minutes is too much, in my opinion. Loads of different sound effects are used they sounded very daunting. Say, just something simple like the innocence of a child's laughter can be turned into something so damn creepy. So yeah, that's used. You'll have heartbeat effects, because then it makes the audience think about their own heartbeat, and that they just feel the heartbeat. It's such a good one to use. It helps that suspense build up even further. You might have a piano sound, just one key, and that's just creepy as anything. You might have a radio come on, traditional horror effects, a clock ticking away, like, you think, oh gosh, something bad's gonna happen any second, which is brilliant. You've got a lot of booms, they're always a nice one to use. And even music boxes, there you go, another traditional horror sound. Anything innocent associated with children, and shove that in horror, and it's creepy as hell. a nice little innocent doll, and then suddenly it's freaking it's taken over by some demon or something. Okay, anyway, the conventions I followed, I used all the camera shots that I've mentioned. Maybe, was it? I might not have used. Oh no, I did. Sorry. So yeah, I used all the camera shots, and also I used a following shot, which was also an establishing shot, because I wanted to show you the scene, which is the shot through the trees, I mean, and then it comes up behind the two individuals. So partially an establishing shot, partially a following shot. I really like that effect. Because it's as if somebody's following them, they know where they are at all times. I kept it to around about 2 minutes long, because I think, you know, that's the way, the midpoint, okay, so I think 2 minutes is a decent time. I used quite a few different effects, such as the kind of strobe effects, or really fast jump cuts, but it was more of a strobe what I was going for. Other video effects, such as the scratchy looking video effects that were placed over some of my videos, and also those little interrupting clips that cut in between the videos to break up that continuity. I used different sound effects, such as people crying, doors shutting nice and loud, a little cassette player at the start, just the scraping of that, if that makes sense. Just all different sound effects, okay? And I also changed the colour of all my clips. I made them, I increased the contrast of all of them. Some of them I decreased the brightness, and with all of them, I think it was, I changed the colour to, like, I added a blue tint to it, because I wanted to use that to make the video look more chilling. I don't use some of the conventional sound effects like I've mentioned, such as the piano or the child's laughter, because that's just not appropriate in my film trailer. But I feel like my trailer is more of a thriller rather than a horror. Personally, I think I've thought too much into it, and I could have just done something so much more simplistic, you know, a demon or something simple like that. But no, I thought, oh, there's this girl that gets bullied, and then she goes, you know, she gets down, and then somebody claims to help her, and then blah blah blah. Oh, but the thing I have forgotten to mention is the fact I use a female, okay? I'm breaking the conventions there because I'm introducing new ideas into my work here, okay? But what I do, I thought this was quite clever. First of all, I break the conventions, okay? So the female is kind of the killer. She turns into the bad person. So she goes from nicey victim to kind of killer, a bit mental. There's the conventions broke, okay? Because we don't expect the females to be the crazy ones. You'd usually expect it to be a man. But then she turns around and says she doesn't want to do it, which therefore reinforces the traditional horror conventions, because she is gentle, as we'd expect females to be portrayed as. So therefore I break the conventions, and then I reinforce the conventions again. So I only partially break those, which I thought was quite clever. But yeah, that is about all I can say really for now. Sorry that I rambled on a bit, but there's all my ideas, and I hope you like them.
Thank you for chatting with us today, Lauren. I wish you the best.